Good morning, guys. Phil Roth was not only a prolific author, but a very close, dear personal friend of mine and my family's. He grew up with my father when they were little kids out in Newark, New Jersey, and they remained friends for almost, I guess it was probably about 80 years. Can you believe that? Almost 8 decades or more. He was at my dad's funeral a couple of years ago. He was a lovely, close friend. He was always there for my family and I as we were for him. And he will be very sorely missed for sure. It's tough, but for those of you who are big Phil Roth fans, I just thought I would try to reach out and tell you something a little personal to give you a little bit of, I guess, a sense of camaraderie or something like that. Sorry for those of you who are just tuning in. This is Graig Weich from BeyondComics.tv, comic book artist and writer and all that stuff. But it's hard, you know. It's a difficult kind of thing to deal with. But I'll tell you some personal stuff that might give you a sense of comfort to some extent. For me, I never knew Phil to be this super celebrity star kind of person that people seem to see him as. To me, he was my dad's friend, that he grew up with. That's how I always knew Phil. Very serious guy to most, but to my dad, they were like two college buddies laughing and joking and, high-fiving each other. I mean, it was amazing. Even when they hit their 80s, the way they would come to life as these youthful, young guys was amazing. It was such a terrific kind of thing to see, these quite older guys, suddenly coming together and kind of reinvigorating themselves and being so youthful and happy together, and they would always chat and talk as if no time had passed at all, as if they were still in their 20s. I posted some very awesome photographs of Phil and I, and also of my dad and Phil when they were in their 20s together, actually teens and 20s, and I think you guys might love to see those pictures. That's on my Instagram and on my YouTube, which you can see in the links below. But I remember having a very serious conversation with Phil after the funeral for my dad a couple of years ago. And I asked him, I said, what do you think, Phil? Do you believe in an afterlife? Do you think that the state of consciousness that embodies what we are continues after the body passes away? And he looked so sad, and he looked down and he said, I'm afraid not. And I felt so sad, because he felt that unfortunately, despite as much as he would like to have it make sense that consciousness continues after the body passes away in some form, he did not think that was the case. I then told him that my father and I had very deep conversations, and I would always bring up different theories about how consciousness could potentially continue after the body goes, which I write about in all the new stories and the comic books and the things that I'm doing with Ray Vidactyl, my characters and all that kind of stuff. So I told Phil that a lot of that's based on real conversations that I had with my dad and stuff that I had studied. And I thought that maybe the consciousness is being sent back and forth through the brain as a wireless modem, meaning that the brain itself, may not just be a storage device for memory and consciousness and existence and desire and purpose and ideas, but maybe the actual brain inside our heads is actually a wireless modem that's sending and receiving signals to a place for retrieval after death. And then sure enough, I did some research and found something that my friend Joe and I discussed called the Akashic Records. And the Akashic Records is supposedly where memories are stored in the kind of cosmos or ether, if you will. I know this sounds like sci-fi and kind of, oh my God, it sounds so crazy. But I would like to think for a moment that maybe I gave Phil a sense of a glimmer of hope that maybe there's some science that will be very commonplace one day, but at this time it's yet to be quantified science, meaning that it's science, that maybe there is a way that consciousness continues past the death of the body, and not to fear it, because it's very possible that since we can only quantify and study the physical matter here, that if you're dealing with the exact opposite, then we don't have the tools to be able to test it. But maybe one day it will be testable, and something that people can actually scientifically prove. So why tell yourself it's impossible when we do not know for a fact that it's impossible? It's just as possible as it could be impossible, and there's no evidence to tell you one way or another. Again, we're limited to only testing physical matter and nothing else. And again, Albert Einstein himself said something along the lines of energy cannot be created nor destroyed, only transferred, something like that. And if that's true, then that means it just moves from one place to another. So again, I hope that gave some kind of sense of comfort, and it's definitely a possibility, right? One of the other things too was I love the fact that Phil enjoyed looking at my comic book. I gave my comic book Gekido and some of the other stuff I'd worked on in Justice to him, and that was a great feeling that he he liked that stuff. You know what I mean? My dad loved comic books, like, oh my God, when they were kids, right, with comics. But again, Phil has left behind such a tremendous legacy and such wonder through his work and his very edgy writing and stuff, and a lot of the sweet, nice characters, those few little sweet, nice characters were based on my dad, some of them, and also on my dad's brother, Chubby Bernard, as well. My dad, Martin Weich. And it's kind of sweet that he bases or had based a lot of his little moments growing up and his sweet innocent times, and utilizing my dad as characters throughout sometimes. That was great. My dad did he was interviewed on this terrific documentary back, I guess, in the late 1980s, early 1990s. So yeah, if anybody ever has that video, please post it. I'd love to see that again. But my dad's on there with Phil, which is really nice. And like I said before, I posted some really cool photos of Phil and Dad and stuff that people might get a kick out of seeing. So I hope that, again, this gives some kind of sense of comfort due to the loss. And it's tough, but I mean, the great thing is that he really left behind a wonderful legacy, right? Anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and I wish you a very happy morning. Good morning to you all. I'm just getting up to kind of start the day here, and if you get a chance, subscribe for updates, and I'll post anything else if I could think of other things. Such a lifetime of memories there, very tough though. No matter how old somebody gets, you miss them. That's it. Whether they're young or old, at least we had 85 years of Phil Roth and 83 years of my dad, so that was nice. And I guess for all of you, try to be hopeful, try to have Phil live on through his work and through everything. And it was interesting how Phil was able to blend kind of little moments of real life with this kind of crazy, wild, things. And I'm sure you guys, if you've read his work, know. But the blending of fiction and nonfiction is so seamless, so everything just feels completely authentic. And especially if you think back at the time when he started writing. I remember the first book that he wrote. My dad was like, "Oh my God, this is like a very shocking kind of." Just one after the next, he kept writing it. We have a whole bunch of signed books that Phil would always personalize and share with us. And he took my dad and mom to a big party that he had, a big book release party, and when the new movie came out a few years ago, and he really they just had so much fun together, so nice. So anyway, guys, I hope you have a good day, and to be continued. Peace.